You walk into a store, pick a frame, hand over your credit card, and pay a price that feels wrong. But here's the thing, that frame, those lenses, the store itself, they all belong to the same company. You've probably never heard of them, but they decide what you pay for glasses and what you can even buy. Now picture this, a small Italian workshop, one man, a pair of pliers. That's where it started, a humble beginning. But that man had a vision, not just to make frames, but to own the entire chain. From the raw materials to the final sale, every step, every dollar. He succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. Today, that company owns Ray-Ban, Oakley, LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut. They make the lenses and the frames, they run the stores, they set the prices, and they have a grip on the global eyewear market so tight that almost every pair of glasses you've ever worn or will ever wear passes through their hands. But how did one company pull that off? And why does it cost so much to see clearly? This is the story of how one company came to control nearly every pair of glasses you've ever bought, and why it might cost you more than it should. Optical store, pick a frame off the shelf and hand it to the optician. She nods, takes your prescription and disappears into the back. 20 minutes later, she returns with a pair of glasses that cost you $400. You never asked who made the lenses, you never asked who owned the brand on the frame, and you never asked who owned the store. The answer to all three is the same company. That frame you chose, Ray-Ban, the lenses inside, Essilor, the store you bought them from, LensCrafters, all owned by one parent company. EssilorLuxottica. They don't just make the glasses, they control the entire pipeline from factory floor to checkout counter. They own Sunglass Hut, they own Oakley, they own the insurance plans that cover your lenses. They even own the online retailer where you might try to comparison shop. So when you try to buy glasses without them, you find a market that has been quietly walled off. Independent brands struggle to get shelf space. Independent retailers struggle to get wholesale prices. The result? You pay a premium for a product that costs a fraction of that to produce. But how did a company with no household name become the invisible hand behind your vision? The answer begins in a small Italian workshop, with a man who had a very different idea of what a pair of glasses should be. But how did a company you've never heard of become the gatekeeper of your vision? Named Leonardo Del Vecchio, apprenticed in a factory that made molds for eyeglass parts. He learned how to shape metal and plastic into something people would put on their faces. But he saw something the factory owners didn't. The frames themselves were cheap to produce, yet stores sold them for a fortune. Luxottica was born in a small room, with a handful of workers and a single lathe. Meanwhile, in France, two lens companies, Essilor and Essilor, were fighting over the same market. They made the glass that corrected your vision, but they didn't control what happened after the lens left the factory. Opticians chose which frames to pair with which lenses. Retailers set the final price. The lens makers had no say. Essilor was born and immediately began buying up lens labs and coating facilities. They wanted to own the entire journey from raw glass to your face. For decades, the two giants stayed in their lanes. Luxottica made frames, Essilor made lenses. Suddenly, they controlled the store where you bought your glasses. Essilor saw the threat. If Luxottica owned the store, they could dictate which lenses went in those frames. EssilorLuxottica was now the largest eyewear company on earth, owning the frames, the lenses, the labs, the retail chains, and the brands you trust. But their greatest strength, owning every step of the supply chain, would become their fatal flaw. Picture the lens in a factory for pennies. But by the time it reaches your face, that same lens carries a price tag that could buy a smartphone. How? Because one company owns the factory, the brand, the store, and the prescription. EssilorLuxottica makes the frames, it makes the lenses, it stamps the logo, Ray-Ban, Oakley, on the temple. Then it sells those glasses through its own chains. LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut. Every step, the same company takes a cut. Therefore, there is no competition to drive the price down. The wholesale price is set by the same hand that sets the retail price. They mark up the lens, they mark up the frame, they mark up the brand, and you pay the sum. But the real inflation happens in the middle. A frame that costs a few dollars to produce can carry a $100 wholesale tag. The retailer, also owned by the same parent, adds its own margin. The result, a pair of glasses that costs a fortune to you, yet costs almost nothing to make. They set the price. They collect the profit. If regulators succeed, the eyewear industry could change forever. But if they fail, your glasses might keep getting more expensive. Yet the real danger wasn't just high prices, it was what happened when regulators finally took notice. Subscribe to uncover the hidden monopolies shaping your world. China lands like a stone in still water. Regulators in Brussels and Washington begin asking the same question. How does one company own the frame, the lens, the prescription, and the store where you buy them? The answer is a vertical fortress, but fortresses also make targets. EssilorLuxottica responds with a quiet war. It acquires independent labs, locks rivals out of supply chains, and floods the market with its own brands. When a competitor tries to enter, the company simply buys the distributor. Yet the more it consolidates, the louder the whispers grow. A senator holds up a pair of glasses on live television. "Why does this cost more than a smartphone?" he asks. The clip goes viral. The company's lawyers prepare for the worst. They argue efficiency, economies of scale, lower costs for consumers. But the math doesn't add up. Prices keep climbing. The government threatens to force a breakup to split the lens maker from the frame maker from the retailer. It would be the biggest antitrust action in a generation. But the damage was already done. Consumers had noticed, and the backlash was inevitable. Founder with a brilliant idea for affordable glasses. You design a sleek frame, find a factory, and prepare to launch. But then you discover that the company making the lenses, the core of your product, also owns the largest frame manufacturer, the biggest retail chains, and the most iconic brands. You can't compete because you'd have to buy lenses from your own competitor. That's the reality EssilorLuxottica built. Its ambition was to control every step, from raw material to the finished product on your face, and it succeeded. But that success created a vulnerability. When a single company owns the supply chain, the brands, and the stores, there's no incentive to lower prices. Therefore, the cost of seeing clearly stays high. Yet disruption is brewing. Startups are trying to bypass the system. Regulators are circling, and consumers are demanding transparency. The very structure that made the empire unassailable also makes it a target. So where does the eyewear industry go from here? And will your next pair of glasses finally be affordable? So how did one company come to own nearly every pair of glasses you buy? The answer is not a single hostile takeover or a secret boardroom coup. It is a quiet accumulation, decades of buying brands, retailers, labs, even the insurance that pays for your lenses. EssilorLuxottica owns Ray-Ban and Oakley. It runs LensCrafters and Sunglass Hut. It makes the frames and the lenses. It sets the price at every step, yet the full map of its empire remains hidden. Private ownership means no annual report, no shareholder meeting, no obligation to explain. You can trace the threads, but you cannot see the whole web. The lesson is uncomfortable. We want to believe markets are transparent, that competition keeps prices fair. But the truth is, certainty is a luxury. The company that controls your vision does not need to show its hand. It simply lets you pay the bill. Next up, how another everyday product is secretly controlled by just one company. You won't believe who owns the water you drink. Stay curious.